Hey, welcome to the podcast. Tonight we have a special panel episode. We're going to have two other guests come in. We're going to have a topic. We're going to go around the screen and share our views on it. Some of them are going to be pretty amazing because I think we're pretty cool dudes. Again, I'm Scott with the Sober Heathen Podcast. Please check me out on YouTube, Apple Podcast, and Spotify. I'm here with Will. Will has a podcast. Will?
My name is Will. I'm an alcoholic in recovery for 3.5 years. I am the host of the Save versus Poison community. It's a podcast, Twitch stream, and YouTube channel all dedicated to gaming, general geekery, and enduring sobriety in an ever maddening society.
Follow that up, John.
All right, I'll do my best. I'm John. I am the host of the Sober Dad podcast, where we talk about sobriety and parenting. I'm a stay-at-home dad of 4 young kids, and you can find me on Twitter at Sober Dad Pod, and you can find my website at Sober Dad Podcast at BuzzFeed. And yeah, take it away, Scott.
Awesome. Dudes, I just want to say thank you so much for doing this. I mean, you never know when a podcast is going to reach out and touch someone. The random DMs and emails that I get from doing these type of things is I mean, it's so enjoyable. It makes it worth it. And it's a lot of fun just to do it. So thank you guys for agreeing to do this with me. So what brought us together was just a random tweet. I was in a mood, which I tend to get in moods quite frequently here in recovery. And so I was expressing some negativity, and my tweet goes as follows: I really need to rethink and adjust the perception I have of folks in recovery. I take the word as gold and believe their desire to help is as strong as mine. The fact that they are not meeting this is my fault and not theirs. So it kind of embraces the thing that if you've been to any kind of meetings or treatment, they talk about no expectations. When you have expectations of people, those expectations can turn into resentments. And that was a resentment in tweet form. Because what had happened was I have a woman that I'd met in treatment. She's going through all kinds of stuff right now. She's basically homeless. She's going back to jail for 30 days or so. And when she gets out, she has nowhere to go. And so I reached out to a bunch of people that, are constantly saying, yeah, just reach out. We're here to help. We got your back. We'll do this. We'll do that. And I got radio silence from every single person that I reached out to. These were people that I was looking up to. I don't owe this person anything. I'm doing it because I care, because I know what it's like to be homeless. And the last time I was homeless, it was only for about 48 hours, and I got my 4th OWI living in my truck. So I can totally resonate with what she's looking at. And it's really hard to focus on recovery when you don't have a roof over your head. So I took it personally that they didn't reach out, but that's on me. They don't owe me anything, and they don't owe this person anything. But where I was going and what led to that was the disappointment of me reaching out and getting nothing, and not even like, there's nothing I can do. So you guys had some comments. What was your thoughts on that, Will?
I tend to stick very, very closely to the idea that people in recovery kind of have to tend their own gardens. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't have enough manure to go and help fertilize other people's, but for the most part, all of the expectation management that I try to do these days has to do with the idea that my space in recovery has to come first. Anybody else's space in recovery is theirs, and not necessarily theirs alone, but they need to be coming to other people to ask for that help that they need. Now, it sounds like this person that you wanted to help was not able to reach out. Is that accurate?
Jail was coming the next day.
Yeah, jail was coming the next day.
Yeah, and my understanding was that she had been reaching out. So, and I took this recovery coach certification training to try to find a position to be able to walk these paths with people, not lead them, like some avenues of recovery, some people in recovery try to do, to walk with them and help it. So I was just kind of taking it as like a training program, you know what I mean? But
Sure.
but I totally get what you're saying. You got to till your own garden. I like that.
Yeah.
What do you think, John?
So just to clarify, when you were talk about offering help, she didn't want the help, or you were offering to help at where she was going?
Yeah, so she's in early recovery. I had a couple relapses since treatment and trying to get through it. She is wanting out of the dark. She's just looking to catch a break. And so it was the people that I have taken trainings from, the people that are the ones. Reach out. You got to reach out. You got to ask for help when you need something. Don't suffer in silence, type of thing. And those were just the people that it fell on deaf ears, and it was
Mhm.
just it was frustrating. And look, I tweet in anger sometimes, and I totally realize that people aren't going to just drop what they're doing. And Will said it really well. These people are in recovery too, and that comes first. So um, that's where it came from, John.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. So, same analogy that Will was using about, keeping your side of the street clean and the things like that. I mean, I definitely agree that when it comes to my sobriety, I would put that first above someone else's. Not saying that I would, if there was a beer flying at me, I would grab Will and throw him in the way and hope it lands in his mouth. But I'm also just gonna, if I can't help other people if I'm not also tending my own sobriety and I'm not working my program. And I do think that I guess I've seen it in the Twitter space as well. Like, I think a lot of it, there is a degree of ego around there too when it comes to people not wanting to, I guess, put themselves out there, or like yeah, it's very confusing sometimes when you see someone post a very innocuous post and then either, albeit like an AA old timer or somebody else, just come in there and try to like Bible thump them over the head or something. Like there's ways to try to help that I guess aren't helping. Like, it's kind of weird. Like when they think, I think they think they're making a good point, and then they're just making things worse, or just making the person less likely to explore that avenue of recovery.
Yeah, I don't know if it's the same for you guys, but when I first started going to meetings and looking for help, asking for help, was really hard for me to do. That fear of rejection was overwhelming. And
I,
the last thing I want to do, I don't know her really well. I mean, the men and women in this treatment were separate. You know what I mean? I'll be honest, I didn't even remember her, but she remembered me, and she reached out, and we were talking back and forth a little bit. And I just don't, I'm not gonna break my recovery to help somebody, but when somebody reaches out, I want to at least, I don't know, you never know where they're at mentally. One little nudge, one little gift of kindness could be the difference. And if it's somebody that I know, and you're talking about old timers, I think you're referencing like the tough love, suck it up, buttercup, pull up your pants, dust yourself off, get fucking back out there, you little bitch, type of thing. They don't say that. I'm exaggerating, obviously, but
Some do.
some
some
do.
do, some do.
Some do.
I
And
know
I've
a couple.
yeah. So I just wanted, to give her a little grace because I don't know her. So I have no right to say, well, you should have not relapsed. You were on probation. You knew better. But who the fuck am I? Because I was on probation. I got OW on number 4. So I'm not going to like judge people for that. So I was just really frustrated. I feel like this community is so outstanding in so many ways. But I recognize that my disease helps me highlight the shit, the little things, these little things. Like, it is really a nothing burger that they didn't reach back. If I really cared, I would have just kept looking for other places, right? But instead, I stopped to tweet and focus on the negative. And so that's where I went wrong. But I guess the question that needs to be posed then, if you're going to put yourself out there as an avenue of help, what kind of responsibility do you have to maintain that?
Well, it depends entirely on what type of help is asked for. Are we talking about a phone call? Yeah, I can take a phone call almost any time. Are you asking me to fly to Vermont because I have a community member out there
Sure.
that might relapse? I can't do that.
Yeah.
I can't fly out to Vermont and these people are not strangers. These people are friends of mine. And, they're part of a community that I've been building for the last, year plus.
Yeah.
I can do something like take a phone call at odd hours of the night. But there are boundaries that, you need to set in front of the places where you're willing to go to help somebody in recovery. Usually communicating, helping to, talk somebody off a ledge. These are all things that are pretty easy for all of us to say that we're going to do and to be able to do. But the follow-up question to that then is, what type of help was being asked for in this specific instance? And was it something that you would do? And if it wasn't, why is it something that somebody else should be doing in your stead?
Right.
Does that make sense?
No, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
And in this particular example, it was just looking for available housing, whether it be shelter, whether it be a place strictly for women,
Gotcha.
like a woman's house or sober living. She's looking for anything right now. So it wasn't like a monetary ask, it was just, I need a place to rest my head so I don't have to worry about that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
right, I mean,
yeah, go ahead.
There's probably a listing of that kind of information that can be gotten pretty easily by most anybody that has internet access. So I don't think that's a big ask. If they're, if she's looking for information on where she can go that's safe, I don't think that's too difficult an ask to put out towards a greater community. So yeah, I don't think that's something that's going to cross a boundary, at least for me. Like if somebody asked me to do that, I got this lovely PC setup I can take a look at.
Yeah. Well, and it's a lot about who you know to get into some of these places. Sometimes you know somebody that has an in. That's the whole point of a network, right? So
sure, yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I guess I'm as guilty of it as anybody. I can't say they're not, but false advertising saying, reach out anytime, call anytime. Don't say those words. Yeah, and again, you're absolutely right. If I call you up and say, "Hey, can I have $1,000, man? I'm late on this," you got to have your boundaries.
Depends on what you're gonna do for it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have an example of that exact thing that happened on Twitter last week. It was someone was asking for money for bus fare or something like that to get to an AA meeting, and no one was really responding or anything. I didn't want to leave the guy hanging, so instead, because they shared like a screenshot of where the meeting was, so I just jumped on the old Google machine and found their intergroup and gave them the phone number and said, if you call this number, I am sure that someone from AA will pick you up and take you to that meeting. And that's the last I heard of it. So yeah, things like that are doable for people, but it was only $3, but I'm not gonna Venmo somebody, some rando on Twitter, any amount of money, let alone be it $3 or $1,000, just because you don't really know. Like I'm sort of cynical that way, I guess. I like to be able to trust people, but I mean, it's Twitter, so it could have been a bot asking for $3 for all I know, because I don't, I'm new to the community, so I'm not exactly sure who this person is or how long they've been active.
I don't think that's cynicism. I think that's a healthy boundary, bro.
Yeah.
Well, I think you're fine to say, I don't care if it's 3 or 1,000, like giving money to a stranger, like over Twitter. I don't know if I'm going to condemn you for saying no to that on first blush. Like, if the three of us did this every week for the next year, and one of you said, "Hey, I need $50," I think I could probably muster that up. But there's a connection that will have been made by that time, right? But just sending $3 every time somebody on Twitter says, "Hey, I need $3," that sounds like a really good way to scam, or get scammed.
Yeah. Oh, speaking of scams, my dad. It's sort of a long story, but let's just say he has a drinking history too. He called me yesterday talking about being interested in actually attending AA, which I thought was super cool. And he asked me, he's like, so I called and they answered the phone and asked me for my social security number. And I was like, what? And he's like, yeah. And they also told me that AA wasn't good for me and that it wasn't going to work for me and that I need to go into treatment. And they were trying to get like his insurance information. So then I asked him what he Googled. Turns out he went to alcoholicsanonymous.com, not .org, which is the real one, by the way. Alcoholicsanonymous.org is the real one.
Wow.
He went to alcoholicsanonymous.com, and it's a redirect to some recovery type page that's super sketchy. It doesn't look anything like AA. And yeah, he just called the number on there, and this dude was like trying to get all his info and stuff. So you got to be looking out for that kind of stuff too. There's some like, and I've heard stories like some recovery places like, or some like inpatient places can be pretty, pretty bonkers, where they have like this weird like mill where they just like bring you in and then kick you out and then bring you back in. And I think a bunch of them got busted in Florida several years ago.
Huh.
But yeah, and there's always bad actors in every community, including this one, unfortunately. And they're going to try to take advantage of the people that they can. And it's just up to, up to everyone to have the, I guess, the street smarts and the connections to know what's a scam and what's actually someone looking for help or trying to reach out and help.
I think you just gave me an idea for a podcast.
There you go.
Call that number.
It's what I do.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
I'll get
Call
it to
that
you.
number and
I'll
see
try
what
to
happens.
find it. Yeah,
That's
it's in
pretty funny.
it's in my dad's phone history. I'll be like, hey, text me that number that you called.
I
And
honest
then-
to God thought you were going to say like, yeah, my dad said he was going to go to AA, but he actually just took me to a bar and tried to get me to drink again. That was the scam. That's what I thought you were going to say, dude. Like, I was like, oh no, your dad's going to disappoint me the way he disappointed you, but it didn't turn out that way, and I'm happy to hear it.
Yes, me too. No, he's the number one podcast supporter. He's all about it. He likes to suggest that he was like, oh, you should do this and this. And I'm like, all right, cool, thanks.
Dude, that's awesome.
Yeah.
You should have him on as a guest. and
I'm
talk
thinking about
what he's
it,
going
yeah.
through. I think that'd
Well,
be.
I'm gonna.
That's
Sorry.
the whole thing.
No,
Yeah.
Go ahead, Will. Go ahead, man.
Oh, I love the idea of having family members as guests. My first family member that's going to be a guest is going to come up, I think, in another week. I'm going to have my wife on, and I'm going to interview her about all of the shitty things that I did that nearly brought our marriage to an end.
Oh my God.
Fucking awesome.
I will race you to it, because I had that conversation with my wife yesterday, and she
Oh,
said,
did you?
yeah, and she said, you write down the questions and I'll come on the show. And I was like, oh shit. She like, I thought I'd have to take a little more convincing, but she's down too. So yeah.
I like the idea of us competing back and forth. Like I listen to yours, and then I write my questions to be a little bit worse, and then the next week you write your questions to be a little bit worse, and we're all just spiraling towards the bottom of how badly we treated our spouses. Man, this is happy stuff we're talking about right now.
It'll be sobriety Jerry Springer.
Seriously.
I can't wait. I mean, my ex-fiance, she's coming on. She knows she wants to do it. She's just working up the courage. So I mean, that'd
Yeah,
be cool if in the next week we all produce that kind of storm, huh?
yeah, my wife was super skeptical at first about the whole podcast thing, but then, I made her the Mother's Day episode, so then that made it all better. And now she listened to that episode, so she was kind of like, oh, okay, and she's a little more open to the idea of coming on the podcast now.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. I don't know. Getting back to it, I think it's really important that we take kind of a comprehensive view of people that are in recovery. People in recovery aren't angels.
Mm-hmm.
They can be amazing. They can be broken. They can be awful. They can be the sweetest human beings on earth. They can be exactly the same rainbow and textured, pattern of humanity that is the greater body populace, right? They're still people.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes, because addiction comes not out of just like, ooh, I like the way that beer tastes, suddenly I'm drinking too much beer, but often from these places of deep trauma, they're, they start to get a handle on recovery, and then they still have like a nice laundry list of things that they still need to work on underneath that. And oftentimes the amount of shit that people have on their plates in recovery is still so much that trying to do more than take a phone call can be really, really difficult, I think.
I agree. And I think that's why, you hear in AA a lot that don't make any big decisions or do anything drastic within the first year, because you do have a plate full of bullshit that you're trying to, that needs to be focused on first. You're absolutely right. And,
Yeah.
and I don't want to make this sound like I think people that that have achieved quote unquote recovery or in recovery owe anybody anything. I think I agree 100%. You don't owe anybody anything. You owe yourself to get yourself out of the shithole and the shitstorm that you created for yourself. I think if you're going to put yourself out there, though, you have to be careful because you're putting yourself out there, and you could be that next letdown that leads to somebody else making a poor choice. And
Mhm.
again, you don't their choices aren't directly affected to you. You don't make anybody put a needle in your arm. You don't make anybody pick up a bottle. That's not what I'm saying either. I'm just saying that don't put it out there until you're ready. That's I don't want people to sit here and think like I'm not going to AA and saying once you're in recovery, you got to 12-step the shit out of everybody. Everybody that has a problem, go find them, seek them out, and drag them into your thing, and force them through the steps, or force them to do whatever. That's not what I'm saying.
Got to stand outside the bar with your big book and just start, preaching the word of Bill W.
Can I
preaching?
Yeah, can you mind if I take a moment to tell you about my personal savior, Bill W?
Yeah, have you heard the good news?
Have you heard the good news?
I'm gonna start dressing like a Mormon and going house to house.
Where are you located? I'll go with you.
I'm in Denver.
Oh, deal. I'm in. Denver's beautiful.
That's
Never been
right.
there.
That's okay.
I've flown over it a few times.
That's all right.
So,
It's some of the greatest things in my life have happened here. Some of the worst things in my life have happened here. But yeah, Denver's pretty good. Yeah, I say my statement about people in recovery not being angels. I say that with the greatest affection. But I also come to it. This isn't like long-standing wisdom that I've gleaned over the ages. No. I had my own moment of, pseudo feeling like I was betrayed just this last week when I had somebody come into my Twitch stream mid relapse and start talking to me about it. And I felt really, really awful about it. Because one, I've only been doing this Twitch stream for about a year, and we only have it's a pretty small community. And this is the first time that somebody had relapsed while they were a part of the community. And I personally felt like I had let people down, specifically that part of it was my fault, which is ridiculous.
Sure.
I am, I'm a face of a very small thing that is an adjunct to what should be like 6 or 7 different things that you should be doing to try to keep your sobriety. And I am on the very minor end of that. So for me to feel that kind of way about it, absolutely ridiculous, but I still felt that way in the moment and then the next day. So I totally understand why you would feel the way you felt when, calling down your phone tree and people, not picking up the way that you were hoping that they might.
Right.
And I jump in here and think that part of that sounds like I've felt that way before too, not necessarily about sobriety stuff, but the inability that you feel like to help someone, or when you try to help someone and it doesn't work the way you want it to, or it just plain doesn't work. And part of that, I mean, I'll be honest, I think it's a little bit of ego going on there too. Like you think that, hey, I'm doing these things now and I can help all these people, and then when it doesn't work out that way, it's a blow, it's a blow to the ego. And
Sure.
that's happened to me before. And
yeah, you're not wrong.
Yeah.
Oh, there's the first moment of silence that was awkward. I'll babble to keep it to go on. I think I want to touch on something that Will said too. We in all 4 of my treatments, it was the same every time. After about 20 some days into it, every time somebody would come in, all of a sudden they're going to change the world. They're going to be this completely different person. You're going to start a sober living house. You're going to become a sponsor. You're going to do all these miraculous things. But I truly believe, and yeah, you are right also, Will, that this is, Bill W says it well, where it's the use is just a symptom of something deeper.
Mm-hmm.
So all this shit, we're not bad people. We've done bad things, but our thinking is all kinds of fucked.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I came up with so many reasons to borrow money, to pay my taxes, to, I need gas for this, so to know and to assume is an error on my part that this person is being genuine and not seeking attention, or, it could be anything, you know what I mean? And so I'm glad we had this conversation, because, John's right. there was ego involved, things were starting to roll downhill, and I was picking up some steam, getting people directed to different places. And then this one, it just kind of fell flat on its face. Then that can't happen, because I'm only 8 months into this thing, and that can be dangerous for me. When I'm taking on other people's burdens, when I got my own that I still have not cleaned up my side of the street yet, I guess.
Well, I think that, so, a big part of, I think, successful recovery programs is the idea of being of service to other people, right? I think that's something that's talked about in AA and in secular AA as well, right?
Oh, yeah.
I think that when we start to work on our service to other people, we start to take that service to them and we attach it to our senses of self in recovery. We get to this place where we're like, well, right now I'm feeling amazing because I'm in recovery and I'm helping other people. And I want other people to feel that too. And then when we get to a place where somebody lets us down, somebody quote unquote lets us down in that vein, we start to go, I don't understand. This is working for me. Why isn't it working for you? And then there can be this gaze turned internally that says, wait, is this working for me? You start to question it because other people that you're hoping will adopt it aren't adopting it the way that you think that they should. So it's really important that we keep in mind that the service that we do for others is a really, really important part of our recovery, but it has to be an end in and of itself for our recovery. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm following you. It's I don't want to make this all about me, because it wasn't. It's just
share your stories, man.
It's expectations, and there's a time I heard somebody sharing a story. It was a sponsor, and he was talking about I've had 1,000 sponsees and I haven't failed one of them. And it was kind of 1,000 people and they had never relapsed. And he's like, no. He's like, I've had 1,000 sponsees and I haven't drank over one of them. So his point was that he didn't let their shit or mistakes affect his stakes. And I think that's a good point that we can drive home on this thing.
Yeah, that's I kind of like that. Yeah, I get behind that. John, have you worked the sponsee program? Have you done that?
Yeah, so I do have a sponsor. It took me a while to choose one. I was being very picky. I've got kind of a, I don't know, got a stranger danger kind of deal. But yeah, I finally found a guy that I could get along with at the meetings, and turns out he's a house husband, or whatever they want to call them, whatever you call it, where they don't have any kids, but see, I used to call myself a trophy husband, and then the more kids we had, it just made more sense to be the stay-at-home dad or whatever. So
I used to call myself the participation trophy husband, because anybody can get a pudgy bearded white guy. I mean, that's you get one of those for just entering the building, I think.
Yeah, I was. I mean, I've lost quite a bit of weight after getting sober. I was starting to get there, but I'm working on becoming the trophy husband again.
Nice, nice.
Yeah, but yeah, I have a sponsor, and we haven't been together that long, but we started doing the steps, and I think I've already, in my opinion, I've already completed 1 through 3, but got to go by the book. So we're doing it by the book, which means we're literally reading the book together. And with the kids and everything, I think we got through like 1 chapter in the book. So it's going to be a while, but before I even had a sponsor, I started working on step 4, which is the whole resentment thing and the self inventory. So, I mean, it's been good. I think I'm in a kind of a different spot. I think I'm probably one of the easiest sponsees he's ever had, because the only time I've ever texted him was to be like, what time were we supposed to meet up again? And like, I've never like had to call him and been like, I'm going through something, or I need a drink. And it's pretty, he texts me more than I text him. And it's, it's kind of more of like just a friendship where we just have to read the book together every now and then.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's nice to know that if he's there or if I need him, he's there. But at this point in my sobriety, I don't feel like that it's ever going to come to that, because I would probably do something about it myself beforehand, like, changing either, changing my location or changing my frame of mind if I ever did have a craving coming on or anything like that. Just
Mhm.
the accountability would be enough for me if I just texted my wife or texted him, be like, hey, I'm feeling a certain way. If I let them know that the way I am, because I'm still bad about people pleasing. So if I tell somebody that I feel like I'm gonna drink and then I go out and do it, then I'll know that they know. And that would be the worst thing for me, to let someone else down. And because my family and my wife were under the impression that I had been sober for a lot longer than I was, because I only drank by myself and, in hiding, because of all the issues alcohol had made before. So there was no accountability at all.
Mhm.
So now that, if that was a thing, it's good. Just like, a long story short, it'd be nice. It's good to have a sponsor where you can message them if you need them, I
Mhm.
guess.
And if you're strong enough to send out that text or make that call, I mean, it will work.
Yeah.
Well, earlier you had Scott, you said something about why is it so hard to say I need help or ask for help. And I just had an episode, not this last week or the week before, um literally about that. Uh, I don't remember if it was on the Twitch stream or the podcast. Man, I do a lot of talking into a microphone.
I just listened to it today. It was
You
on the
did? Okay.
podcast. You
Okay.
mentioned something about Wizards of the Coast sending a box of magic
Oh
cards to
yeah, yeah.
somebody. Yeah,
Yeah, the
it was.
Pinkertons. Did you guys
Yes,
know
the
the Pinkertons are
Pinkertons.
still a fucking thing? That is the weirdest shit on earth to me. Sorry, pardon me. I don't know if I could swear on here.
Fuck yeah, you
I
fuck
should have
yeah.
asked. I should have asked. I don't
Fuck
know.
it.
But seriously, like the only time I'd ever heard of the Pinkertons before that was in like Deadwood the series from like the early 2000s, and how they were, stone cold bastards, and then the whole, union busting things. Anyways, divergence. Those three little words, I need help, or please help me, like I they're so incredibly difficult for an addict to get to a place where they're willing to say that. And I think that breaking down that barrier is such a huge part of what makes the sponsee part of any kind of a 12-step AA, secular AA, whatever. I think that's such an important part of it. I think that just having any kind of a comfort level with somebody that that you can say that to and get some kind of response, even if that response is just keeping you on the phone to talk while you get through a craving. That's some powerful shit right there, I think.
Yeah, I mean, they say in treatment that it's about 15 minutes that craving hits. If you can find something to do, make a phone call or whatever it is, right around 15 minutes, you're heading in the right direction.
Yeah.
So the sponsor thing is great, and I know so many people that have had great sponsors, and they become like family. You know, um, I talked about being fearing rejection when I first started going to AA meetings in person. I got shot down twice by the first two dudes that I really felt connected to with their sharing. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
The way they shared, I felt, connection there, and I got shot down twice. And then that kind of sent me away. That it's not their fault, and that's not what I'm trying to say. I'm just saying that, that just made it a little bit harder. You know what I mean?
So
To go to the next.
I think that framing right there, the I got shot down framing. I mean, the first couple of times that you go to a meeting, I can't think of too many times in my life personally that were as difficult as the first meeting that I went to. Like, I got diagnosed with chronic substance abuse disorder. I was terrified my wife was going to leave me. I was, dealing with suicidal ideation, to the point where I had a plan, and the only thing that stopped me was the fact that I knew it would be my 11-year-old son that would have found my body. And I had a mentor figure of mine from my early 20s who had this kind of thing happen to him, and he did end up going through with his plan, and it was his kid that found him. And I can't imagine that kid is going to grow up to have, you know, any kind of reasonable view of his father, and that just absolutely terrifies me. So oh, hello family. Sorry, my family. No, I'm recording for something that's not about me. I love you.
And here I thought it was going to be me that had the kids coming in.
So now every
Yeah.
night about this time, my youngest comes in, tries to steal my bubble water, and my wife comes in to laugh at it while it happens.
That's awesome.
Sounds about right. My wife likes to hand me the 3-month-old when I'm in here doing my meetings or my counseling group. So all of a sudden I just have a baby appears out of nowhere, and then everyone in the meeting is paying attention to the baby, and
Yeah.
you know, yep.
Just trying to bare my soul to you, you guys. Don't look at the baby.
Right. Cover her up.
I think that was a great moment. So anybody watching on YouTube, I think that was a great moment. That's cool. Those moments wouldn't happen if the course wasn't corrected. You know what I mean? So it's
Nope.
Exactly.
really appreciate that.
But I was vibing real hard on what Will was saying. That's like my almost exact experience with the first AA meeting. About Yeah, I was in the same boat, worried about my wife leaving and losing the kids, and you know, I didn't know what to do. And same with what you said, Scott, as far as I think that's one of the reasons it took me so long to pick a sponsor, was because I didn't want to ask someone and then be told no. So I waited longer. I mean, ultimately it worked out, but I waited longer than I probably should have or needed to. And then what eventually, because in the meeting they're supposed to read off, like, if you're willing to be a sponsor, raise your hand. But half the people that shared the meeting just skip half the text on that piece of paper for whatever reason. And yeah, they miss all kinds of stuff. Like, I'm the guy that hands out coins on our Monday night meeting now, and half the time I have to remind them to read that part on the paper because they'll just breeze right by it. I'm like, no, up here, like, read that part.
That's such a huge part of it, man. Who is willing to be a sponsor, so you know who you can approach.
Exactly. Yes, that's a big. I mean, in my opinion, you know, if I ran AA, you know, that's every meeting should have to do that. And don't get me started on payment processors for AA Zoom groups and the whole seventh tradition thing. I think it's some unwritten rule where every single AA Zoom group has to have a different payment processor to collect their seventh tradition stuff. It's so annoying. Like, you go to one group and they're using Google Pay, and the other group's using like Venmo and then Cash App, and it's just like, pick one. Just pick one. I'm not going to have all these different things on my phone. But yeah, that's my soapbox. So if I become president of AA and rule everything, then I'm gonna, yeah.
Just need a new currency, sober cash.
There you go. Yeah, well, there it is. Let's make it. Anybody know anything about crypto?
I know not to do it.
You're right.
Well, we all have Twitters, so we're basically Elon Musk's best friends. So maybe we can ask him to make a sober coin.
You know, I keep thinking that, like, blasting him with, hey, I would really like to not see alcohol ads on your shit would be really nice. Yeah. Any chance that you could also make a Bitcoin specifically for addicts? That'd be great. It'd be nice to pay for sobriety related stuff that way. That'd be okay.
It would be awesome to have somebody of that caliber to get on board with and do something for the recovery community in general.
You can call them sobriety chips and really piss off some people.
That would be funny. There's a fascinating amount of celebrity that are out and out in recovery. I used to do this little segment like every Friday night. I only did it for like a month and a half, where I would like go try to find somebody in recovery that was an actor or comedian or something like that, and then spotlight them and just like have them describe in their own words what their experiences were. So Robin Williams, Dax Shepard, just a bevy of different individuals that come from all different backgrounds that it was fascinating to hear. It was, especially early on. I mean, and this is kind of what groups are supposed to do, I think, is to make you feel like you're not doing it alone, that there are other people that understand. I talk about the threads of addiction being woven between all of us that are very, very similar. Like, Scott and John, I can bet you that if we sat down and talked about the ramp up of our drinking to what happened afterwards to how we're doing now, that there's going to be some common threads, and there's going to be some details. There's going to be some severities that are different. But for the most part, I think that knowing that all of us have experiences that are vastly similar is so like oddly gratifying and in some ways freeing. I remember sitting down with the very first friend of mine who called me to ask me for some advice because they had fallen down a K-hole, sorry, ketamine. And he's talking and he's bearing his soul, and I'm just kind of smiling peacefully. He's like, why are you fucking smiling right now? I was like, because your story sounds 90% like mine, man. Like, here's my story. And I laid it out for him. And by the end of it, he just, like, the look of relief on his face was almost total. And he was like, okay, so you've been doing this for a little while. If you've been doing it for a little while, there's hope that I can do it for a little while. I was like, yep. And that's what the connection is, man. That's what the connection to other addicts in this kind of, freeing manner is all about. Right.
Absolutely. And I think that, I don't know about you guys, but I would be safe to bet that there were many times like, who does this? Who wake up in the morning? Who does what I just did? What kind of fucking idiot am I? I cannot believe I did it. I am so stupid. I am the dumbest person on the planet for making this decision. And then you start to realize you're not an anomaly. It's the fucking disease itself that's manipulated you and turning you into something. But going into treatment and hearing those stories, man, it was freeing. It was like, oh, thank God I am, because you think you're the only one. You're the only one that this is, is this bad, but you never say it out loud.
Yep.
It's just up in here, and I just hearing that is absolutely free.
Yeah. John, you got the book out, man.
I was gonna say, you're gonna go big book on us, brother?
Yeah, I'm gonna thump it real
quick.
I was looking for one particular so what you were talking about, this is in the Dr. Bob story. That's like the first thing I felt and I read in the big book that really resonated with me, and that's how I felt as I was leaving my first meeting, was what you were talking about, the similarities. Because I started listening to a couple podcasts before, because it was a few days out from when I essentially came out of the closet to my wife. So I step 5 my wife, for people that don't know. And I didn't even know what step 5 was, but basically you admit to God, yourself, and another human being the exact nature of your wrongs is what step 5 says.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know what that was, but I was 2 weeks sober, but not doing anything about it. All I was doing was just not drinking, and that wasn't working for me anymore. And I was just miserable the whole day. And finally, I was either going to go get shit-faced, or I was going to tell my wife why I was so miserable and upset and everything. So I just vomited all the shit that I've done over the last, basically our entire marriage, the 10 years we'd been married, and just came clean about everything. So I was in a bad way, but when I left that meeting, I felt exactly the same way you were talking about, where, like, these people get me. And if I had paid attention to the differences, it would have been a lot different, because I don't have a lot of the experiences that other people have had as far as like jail or anything like that. So it would have been very easy for me to be like, oh, well, I'm not that bad. I must not be an alcoholic, or, and talk my way out of it. And before, I think I had used things like that to justify my drinking, because, like, oh, I'm still functional, the kids are all bathed and in bed, and the house is relatively clean and all this stuff. Like, I was still getting things done. My relationship with my wife was just horrible, because I would just take all my shit out on her. So, but yeah, as I was leaving that, and then going to the reason I'm holding the book, I was trying to find this page, but when he's talking about Dr. Bob, and he said, of far more importance was the fact that he was the first living human with whom I had ever talked who knew what he was talking about in regards to alcoholism from actual experience. In other words, he talked my language. So that was the first thing I ever highlighted in this book, and it stuck with me for a long time. The first meeting I ever chaired, I read that passage along with a bunch of other references in the book about people relating to other people. And that's probably one of the biggest tools in my in my program, my sobriety is things like this, getting on Zoom calls or going to in-person meetings, or now that I have the Twitter thing going on, just getting on and talking to other like-minded individuals that have the same goal. And when you boil all of it down, that goal is to not drink or not use or whatever, pick your poison, or whatever the PC term is for it now, drug of choice or substance of a problem, or I don't know. There's too many terms for it, but yeah, just don't do the thing. And we're all trying to not do the thing together. So that's a big thing for me, is just the community.
Yeah, dude, I remember walking into my first AA meetings and I was such a judgmental prick.
Hmm.
I mean, I live in this small town. I graduated with 69 people in my high school
Nice.
class. And I walk
You went
into
there. You fucking went there.
That's fucking great.
Fucking degen.
I walked in and there's a bunch of, what I would call hillbillies. And I can say that because my dad's a hillbilly. He's a farmer. He's always dirty and covered in grease and dirt or whatever. But these dudes walked in, they doesn't look like they did anything with their hair in 40 years. They're missing teeth. They're laughing about all this stupid shit. And I'm like, I am not like these guys. And I focused on the difference. And the important thing to send to somebody that is listening to this, that is thinking about recovery or in early recovery, every time you say, I'm not that bad yet, you got to keep in mind that yet means it's coming. It will come, because as many times as I heard that in a meeting, I didn't believe it. I'm not that bad. I'm not going to be that bad. That's not going to be me. Well, you know what? When I walked in that meeting and I judged those people, I'm living back home. Now I have barely any money in the checking account. I have 4 OWIs. I'm not going to have a license for 7 years. All those things that I wasn't like happened because I couldn't quit. I couldn't find that way. And so if you're listening, to this, it is very important to walk into these doors of whatever meeting that you go to, whatever variety, whatever flavor that you decide to go to, is to find the similarities and not focus on the differences, because you will paint yourself into a corner real quick. Just my 2 cents.
I think there's a death of ego that needs to happen when you finally come to a place where you understand you're an addict. And I think that oftentimes, I think the ego can be a good thing, but I think that especially for people in early recovery, it often acts in an effort to try to preserve the sense of self that we've always had. Like,
Yeah.
if you told me in my early 20s I was going to be an alcoholic, I would have been puzzled and not understood what the fuck you were talking about. If you told me in my 30s, I would have said probably, and then rationalize it away. Now in my 40s, I know deep to my core that I am an alcoholic in recovery.
Sure.
Like, there is no ego trying to save me from myself in this instance. And I think that is where most of that judgmentalism comes from. I think that you walk in that door and you're like, well, I'm not like these people. Well, sweetie, I hate to tell you, you probably are closer to being where they are at the same point in their life as you are now, than you realize. And that's a rough realization. I mean, there's so many fucking rough things that happen to you the first couple of months when you're newly sober. There's so many things about your idea of yourself that get absolutely torn to shreds, because if you're doing the work that you have to do to be sober, you are taking a firm and full accounting of the things you did while you were on your substance. And that's hard, man. That's hard.
Yeah, I can have an exact example of that. My daughter, it was I had started going to AA, but I was still feeling pretty shitty about myself. And my daughter was doing something, and I found myself kind of like lecturing her, and the phrases I was using was like self-control and moderation, and I was literally like having these words come out of my mouth, and then I just, like, in my head I'm like, who am I to say this? Like, I couldn't do that with, with alcohol. So like, who am I to be telling this 5-year-old how she should, have some self-control and all this? Because it was still, I hadn't really grasped the full nature of it, and realizing that, the whole powerless over alcohol bit. I mean, I already knew I was, but I hadn't really connected the dots. But still, I was trying to lecture my 5-year-old on how, like, I don't even remember what it was. I think like you can't have an entire bag of candy for no good reason. And it's moderation, and like, it's bad for you. You should, yeah, that's what it was. It's bad for you, and it can, make you sick and unhealthy. And all the while, for the first 10 years, in 5 years before she was even born, I was drinking almost every day. And yeah, so it
You
was
can't
like,
eat that bag of candy. Meanwhile, you're through your second fifth of Tito's in a night.
I was even while drinking, I was having conversations like that with her. Like, I would have like, drank a whole 6-pack of IPAs in like 2 hours, and I'll be like, you can't eat that candy, that's bad for you, or things like that. And yeah, there was no self-awareness at the time. And then once I got sober, I became hyper self-aware, and it was almost like imposter syndrome or something. Like, who am I to be parenting this child and giving them life advice when I couldn't even get my own shit together?
It's amazing, isn't it? You know what I mean? Like the things that you can catch yourself once you get to a certain point in recovery. The things that you said, they make so much sense now, but you couldn't see it.
Yeah.
I mean, I went to, and I know Will probably hasn't heard this part, but I went to the lengths of creating something wrong with my brain. There's no word for it because I don't know what I was going for.
No, I watched
But
your story. I watched your story, dude.
you saw
Yep.
that? Yeah.
Yeah,
And
I watched your story.
so
I unfortunately I wasn't able to see any, like, John doesn't have anything loaded up on YouTube, and I have limited time and access. Well, not access, but limited time to check out podcasts and stuff. But I had enough time while I was doing some work stuff around the house that I was able to throw your thing up on YouTube. So yeah, no,
privy.
yeah, I'm privy, man. That was a hard story to listen to. It's not easy to listen to, but it's worthwhile to listen to. So yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I try to when my kids, I'm parenting from a distance. You know what I mean? I see them for the first time in over a year yesterday. But there's some things that happen in school. My kid's got a couple pink slips. You know what I mean? And the dad in me is like, "What in the? Why did you punch this kid? Why did you get a pink slip? Why did you do this?" And and then it's like, "All right, take a step back here, dude. Take a step back here. You created a fake cat that you tripped on.
Hmm.
You make poor decisions that doesn't, because he said to me, he said, yeah, I'm just a bad kid. And I was like, whoa, dude, you are not a bad kid. You made a bad choice. And now we just move on from it. And it's helping me grow as a parent. I hope it's helping me grow as a parent. It's got to, right?
Yeah. I mean, that sounds like an appropriate way to handle that kind of thing. I would think. I have a 14 and a 9-year-old, and from one dad to another, that's about right. Like, your kid gets in trouble, they tell you, I'm a bad kid. You say, you're not a bad kid. You just made a bad decision, and we need to find a way not to make those bad decisions in the future. Yeah. Congratulations on getting to see your kiddos, bud.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, my kind of chain of thought that goes anytime I get a craving usually ends up with me thinking about what happens to me if I ever lose access to my children, and it's not a pretty picture.
Yeah, playing the tape forward, same thing. That's I shared this, I think, on Scott's podcast, and I've said it on mine before too. Everybody says that you're not supposed to get sober for other people, or it has to be for you for it to stick and all that. And I said before, I disagree with that in part because, I did not take myself to AA because I wanted to go to AA. I went to AA for my family and to try to keep my family together. So I got sober for my wife and kids, and now I'm staying sober for myself, because once I was there, and once I started educating myself on on alcoholism and on my condition, or whatever you want to call it, that's when I decided, like, this is something I need to do for me too. And the benefits far outweigh anything else. I mean, being able to actually go to the gym and work out instead of go to the gym and like sneak drinks in the locker room or be too hungover to work out. So I'll just sit in the hot tub for 2 hours while my kids are at the daycare at the gym, just so I don't have to do parenting stuff anymore. So yeah, that's we're in the same boat there, playing the tape forward, and that's the only end result I see if I go back out is losing my wife and kids, and that is that's a no-go for me. That's that would not end well.
Well, it's really great to, I mean, it's really great to hear you guys, I'm so happy that you guys found the way to keep things, where they're at right now. And I'm sorry, I'm not trying to harp on it, Will, but that moment when your son came in, dude, it just almost makes a dude want to cry.
No.
It's so great to see that happening. You know what I mean? And that's what I'm working for again. And it could happen. No expectations, right? But
well, you got to believe
no.
that it can.
I can only do everything that I can do today to make that happen. And then the fate is in somebody else's hands. So, well, I need to go check on my great grandmother, and I'm doing the recording. So let's just go around final thoughts and plug your stuff again, just in case somebody decides to listen to this in 2 different parts and they forget who we were by the end of it. So John, what you got?
I'm John, and my daughter just came in. So how about Will takes it?
Okay, all right, I can do that. Final thoughts. I think that we need, as people in recovery, need to be open to helping other people in recovery. I think that's a huge cornerstone of what reinforces our good decision to stay in recovery. I also think that we need to have realistic boundaries around what we're willing to do and an understanding that other people have boundaries around what they're willing to do. So while it's okay for us to ask, it's never upon somebody else that we've asked. It's never their responsibility to automatically say yes. They can say no, and we have to respect that no. And it does not diminish what we are doing, and it does not diminish their recovery either. We will try to find help for the people that we can help, and for those that we can't, we will try to, offer what comfort we can and keep our garden tended the way that we know how to tend our gardens. I'm Will. I'm the host of Save versus Poison. You can find us on Twitch at twitch.tv/SVP podcast, on Twitter at VS_save, on Facebook, the Save versus Poison podcast, and on everywhere that you can find podcasts, Google, Apple, all that shizzle. Save versus Poison podcast. Yep. Cheers. Right on. John, over to you, bud.
Yeah.
All right. I'm John Skillman, and this is
Alice.
That's Alice. And I'm the host of the Sober Dad podcast. On all the platforms, you can go over to my landing page, which is Sober Dad podcast at buzzsprout.com. You can send me an email at soberdadpodcast@gmail.com. Find me on Twitter at soberdadpod. And yeah, this was a great conversation. Loved having it, and look forward to doing more with you guys. And I gotta get Will's BattleNet info and his Steam info. You too, Scott. And you got anything you want to say? No. All right, back to you, Scott.
All right, awesome. Yeah, man, it'd be sweet to game us some other fellow recovery nerds. Yeah, I think Will said it best, so I don't need to rehash anything. I think he laid it out pretty nice. I think that you guys and us being willing to recover out loud, that's doing everything that we can to help the next person in line, and having people on to share their stories. I think that's really important. So I can't wait to listen to more of your stuff, Will. It's going to be fun to be in touch, and I really thank you guys for allowing me to be here as well. The Sober Heathen. If any of you, you can search Sober Heathen on any social media and find me. Scott at soberheathen.com, email. if anybody listens to my podcast and you'd like information for Will or John's podcast, I will make sure to get it to you, and help them promote their stuff as well. So this is awesome. Great conversation, dudes. And if you're all willing to do it again, we'll have to get together and do it again, and keep spreading the good word. The good word of the Blue Book. We're gonna go door to door in Colorado,
Mormon style.
Mormon style. All right,
We'll get
gentlemen.
some segues.
Yeah, give me that number to that AA thing, and I'll do a podcast on it. I'll call them up.
Yeah, I'll shoot it over to you with my email.
Yeah, give me your social security number too. I'll get you signed up.
Yeah.
I conveniently forgot it.
All right, guys. Well, have a great night, and we'll talk soon.
All right. Bye.
Take care, fellas.
See you, guys.